Sahana bhavatu sahano bhunaktu saha viryam karavavai tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace. Good evening. We're continuing with various chapters from the complete works of Swami Abhedananda, one of the 16 disciples of Krishna. And this chapter, we covered Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga the last 2 weeks. So this week we'll start Jnana Yoga.
Swami, just before we do, I'd like to just offer a couple of thoughts that came as a result of our emphasis on Karma Yoga. Because Bhakti Yoga and I think Karma Yoga were fairly short chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, being succinct, they were powerful. So it occurred to me that other aspects that we like to bring to the party when we talk about Karma Yoga, the pathway to realization of God through the work that we do.
Sorry, Maharaj, you're just saying that it's not audible, so let me just see if there is something here that is not working. Just this.
Does that mean we didn't get the chant either?
Yes, it's not audible for some reason. Sometimes this is a technical problem.
You know, pictures worth 1,000 words. What's the problem?
Should be working now, let's hope.
Hello, all of you out there in
Is it working?
computer land. Are we reaching each other now? Hello.
Let me just wait for answer.
We have sound.
Testing.
Well, I get. He's working. Okay, yes, he's working.
Very good.
Swami, would you like to quickly chant once more?
Well, I suppose I could.
Audible.
Did you get the video? They had the video of the chant?
Yeah, that's okay.
They can read my
Yeah.
notes.
So why don't you, we'll just quickly mention that we're reading in the, how many volumes? 11 volumes?
11 volumes, I
Of
think.
Swami Abhedananda's complete works, which for some reason is this treasure house, treasure
Uh-huh.
chest, like a pirate treasure chest.
Uh-huh.
Has really not been opened, I believe, by many of us here. And we're finding it a wonderful finale, or kind of like the crescendo at the end of a great piece, because he writes so well. We're going to read a little in Jnana Yoga tonight. But before we do, I was just thinking a couple of thoughts that came as a result of our reading Karma Yoga last night about work. And that is that there's this... Make it an integral part, some of us would say, of as many yogas as we can. There are 4 major paths. It seems to us that an integral, holistic approach, perhaps emphasizing one or another even at certain times of the day or because of our temperament, maybe foundationally, I won't say primarily, but something like that, primary focus, but to integrate them all. So if Karma Yoga is the source of joy, and this is a source of concentration, and if it helps us in every way to purify the mind, then I would suggest that we need to emphasize it and not leave it like the cat outside the door. Oh yes, it's there and all that. Because by being guided, and we may pick this up again someday, by the hand of the Lord, the hand of God, holding us, leading us, we find such simple things as this happening. By the very thought of the aspiration to work, you know, the wonderful Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran says, work is love made visible. By just thinking of God, in this very concrete, tangible way, we may get an uplift of spirit immediately when we think of God holding our hand, carrying us, leading us into a day's work. I remember a Mormon that we stayed with at the Parliament of Religions when we went to Salt Lake City. And I saw no difference really between his home and the Parliament atmosphere in the morning. Not as we say an obligatory prayer, but in his heart, soul. He was a convert, incidentally. He would go out the door in the morning and say, "Oh Lord, guide my footsteps during this day." And with the very idea that we're that close to God, that he can tangibly lead us and hold our hand and guide us, we may get an uplift of spirit. And at that moment, I think we have a real key to the meaning of happiness. This is stuff that happened as a result of reading last time. There's a school of thought which always left something to be desired for me, that happiness is moving, see, the fourth dimension in it, the action component, toward a goal, but this person has the idea of an ever-receding goal. Now, I don't buy that, meaning that we had a moment of happiness when we had the goal, we're moving. But when that goal is union with God, it's said that when the mind thinks of God in a meaningful way, trying the transcendental God, and finds some kind of immediacy there through that link of action, they say the mind is really one with God. In other words, when you're inspired by the transcendentality of God, and it comes into your mind and heart like a flash of just an instant, even at that moment we're seeing to the bottom of the well, if you will. So to me, that's happiness. The goal is God. We feel we're moving toward it. And that pull, that appealing, that ideal, which we feel is the foundation of reality, the experiential center of subjectivity for us, that perception to begin with, that is happiness. So that's what my take out is, Brother Carry over from that. Would you lead us into this marvelous new path? What is it? How do you pronounce it?
Jnana. Jnana Yoga.
Really? Oh, really? Remember the story about the Irishman? The fellow said, "Oh, really?" He said, "No, all righty." All right, let's flap our wings and see how far they'll carry us tonight.
All right. The last is the Jnana Yoga. It's actually all these extra dozen. The last is Jnana Yoga, the path of wisdom. The word jnana, being derived from the Sanskrit root jna, to know, means knowledge.
Same word. Do you see that? The root, knowledge, jnana, gnosis. All right.
And the ideal, which it holds up before its followers, is the realization of that absolute truth, which is the one common source of all subjective and objective phenomena in the universe. It teaches that there is one life, one being, one reality, and that all notions of distinction and differentiation, all beliefs in the permanent duality or multiplicity of existence, are unreal and illusory.
Hallelujah. Ooh, sorry, that was a short and succinct part. Well, that kind of sums it up. So we just fold our school pads here and go home and think about it. The ultimate foundation of Vedanta, which theoretically could be heard the first day we enter the temple, is that we must learn to differentiate, to discern, yes, they use the word to discriminate, to discern between the apparent and the real. The whole of life. That is a point of Vedanta. So, Jnana Yoga is based entirely upon the monistic principle of Advaita. That's capital A. And I just get such a kick out of the fact that once we had a grandmother tongue, who knows where, we in the West are quite sure it wasn't inside India, and the folks in India naturally, after the whole thing, sure it was India, just like the American Indians, the eternal religion, just like we do with mystics. And they think they all came from Arizona. Not only that, but from this particular kiva. We got a beautiful picture of the kiva from your lady chiropractor, Janice, huh? Janice Kalik. Yeah. I got to bring that over one day because it's so. Everybody thinks it started here because it's within our own hearts. But the Westerners are quite certain because of linguistics. And the Indians are, a lot of people very strong about this now, that the Aryan people, that is to say, the Indo-European speaking people, came from someplace north of India, probably in Russia. We all sat around a lake, huh? How long ago? No one remembers. A long time ago. And as I love to say, some to the east, some to the west, and some flew over the cuckoo's nest. And after these thousands of years, we're coming back, particularly from the west and the east, and finding each other again, and finding that the roots of our languages, whether it's Sanskrit or Latin or Greek or English or Norwegian, and you know that little thing, it's so beautiful. In India, the Sky Father, transcendental.
So Maharaj, apparently, as we are moving the microphone, the sound is stopping for people here. So let me.
Good.
Yeah.
Has it been that way for 10 minutes? Or just now?
No, just now it stopped. It was
Well,
good,
that's
and then.
something that's Mickey Mouse, and we can't have that, so let's fix it. And I'm sorry, because but you know, can't share it with joy. Are we back again?
Just give 1 second. Maharaj, put things in place.
Are we with each other? Yes, hello there. Can we hear each other?
Okay, let's see.
We'll chalk all this up to the coronavirus because frankly that's the reason we're talking to each other over the airwaves or whatever they may be, and to our immense joy, sometimes at great distance. Is the sound back?
The image is frozen. Okay, now it came back the image. Let's see what they say.
So we have to say something for them to know whether they.
Yeah, ask them if they can hear you.
Can we hear each other, and more important, can we understand each other? It reminds me, you know, of the mother that says to her son, John, can you hear me? Till they're getting up to go to school time. And then she says again, John, can you hear me? Meaning, understand me. John, can you hear me? This is just about as embarrassing as it gets, excepting perhaps for the techie. Are we in business?
I'm trying.
No.
Oh, okay. Seems like, let's see. Ask them again.
Shall we continue? I'm so sorry about this, everyone. Yeah.
Technical. Okay, good, yes.
Okay, kids, we're very sorry. This is what's happening. As we say, we're chalking up the corona. We'll go over this again some other time, but what I'll just say now is that this tongue that we used to speak, the grandmother tongue, thousands of years ago, from which has come Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, English, and yes, Norwegian, has the same name for the earth, for the Sky Father and the Earth Mother, God transcendent and immanent, which is the foundation of what we like to call the perennial philosophy, the universal languages of most of the religions of the world. Sky Father, Earth Mother, and the Sky Father in Sanskrit is Deus Pitar, in Zeus Pater, in Latin, Jupiter, and in Norwegian, Tu, from which we get Tuesday. So here we have these cognate words, Jnana Yoga, Advaita. Advaita means the A is atypical, both in Greek and in Latin, and I don't know, in Greek and English and Sanskrit, means not. Dvaita means dual. Advaita, non-dual. Okay. So Jnana Yoga is based entirely upon the monistic principle of Advaita, or non-dualistic system of Vedanta. Its purpose is to show that subject and object are but the two expressions of the one absolute being, capital B, or substance, capital S, substance, standing underneath, foundation, the ground of being, that God and man, the creator and the created, are only different aspects of one universal reality. Capital R. Capital R. Its aim is to resolve the diverse phenomena into one ultimate being, from which proceed all powers and all forces manifested in external and internal nature, and which is the abode of infinite intelligence and eternal happiness. Kids, it doesn't get much better than this, because we have profound wisdom, and we have joy. In other words, we have Gilbert and Sullivan, Rogers and Hammerstein. And to me, the whole human being is she and he who has poetry in her soul and wisdom in the mind. And every part of the human being is nothing but the infinite shining. Work, right? Love of God, wisdom, and the way we find it, friends, is through a simple procedure known as silent meditation. When will the Westerners, I speak to you, my brothers and sisters out there in radio land, TV, now computer, hey, when will we get the idea that to sit in silence, not to borrow too much on a phrase from our friends Gilbert and Sullivan, with openness, it's really simple. Receptivity, yes, yearning, a feeling of incompleteness, a wish to be whole. And love is the path to God. There you go, Swami. This is really good.
Did you catch the absolute with the S and the O switch there?
No, I didn't.
Fourth line down in that paragraph.
Okay, and here the last phrase, and which is the abode of infinite intelligence and eternal happiness.
Yeah, and it's an important sentence. Its purpose is to show that subject and object are but the two expressions of the one absolute being. And that's why the materialists that try to get everything out of object, basically, and the idealists which try to get it all out of subject, always run into problems, and neither system seems to be very satisfactory. And I think Amit Goswami gave the best solution to that, and he says both of them are coming out of the same thing that are prior to that, so you can't get one out of the other because they both arose simultaneously out of Brahman.
My goodness, I'm perspiring. Get me an ice cube.
Well, that'll just make you wetter, but anyway.
No, it'll be cooler. Be cool, man. Cool.
All right. According to Jnana Yoga, matter, mind, intellect, sense powers, names, and forms are but the apparent manifestation of that one substance, which is called in Sanskrit Brahman. They may appear to us as real, but they have in truth only relative reality. The phenomena of the universe are like the waves in the ocean of Brahman. As waves rise in the sea, and after playing for a while, once more merge into it, so the waves of subject and object rise, live, and dissolve in the ocean of the absolute substance Brahman. Brahman is described in Vedanta as, quote, that of which all animate and inanimate objects are born, by which they live and into which they return after dissolution. It should be known and realized by all, unquote. It is the essence of divinity.
Capital D.
It is like the eternal canvas upon which the creator or the cosmic ego and the created or individual egos are painted by Maya, the inscrutable creative power of the infinite being.
Do we still have sound? Are we still sound?
It looks like
All right. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I really hear melody. I really hear music accompanying these whole paragraphs. It's Handel all over again. A lot of people don't know, but we have a wonderfully erudite devotee named Samuel Abraham Klein, who just loves Beethoven, identified with everything that wonderful soul brought into the world through his music. And I can understand Bach and Mozart being part of the tributaries, you see, that led to Beethoven. And it's Sam Klein that pointed out to me what would be obvious to my brother, who is a musician as well as everything else, that Handel, the wonderful diapason stops out organ of Handel's music, with all of the keyboards and the foot pedals and everything, the high and the low and so there's something Handelian to me about what we're reading tonight. I hear melody in it. And Swami, he did mention here, it's a plural, but it's interesting that what you're speaking about, all of these things, the paragraph began, if you remember, according to Jnana matter, mind, intellect, sense powers, names and forms are but the apparent manifestations, plural, which is will-o-wisp is not substance, of that one substance, apparent manifestations of that one substance. All right, which is called in Sanskrit Brahman. So the chief object of Jnana Yoga is to unify God and the individual soul, and to show the absolute oneness that exists between them on the highest spiritual plane. This is Vedanta. This is the Vedanta society. Are you aware that a very interesting phrase has been selected in English for the resurgence of the spirituality of India? Apparently it had to recently undergo a renewal because of the influence of the British, what, this, that, and the other. The one shining infinity. This is the essence of what happens when you walk in this church, in the door, and find an all-encompassing 4D, 4 dimensions of spirituality. And I'm just getting a big kick out of it. Okay. The individual ego being the reflection, think of this now, this is all quite profound, these are postulates, or image of divinity, capital D, or Brahman, is divine in its true nature. The ego is not the true nature, the ego is a supposition. What shines behind it, and falsely the superimposition comes of this kind of a separate individual, you see, is the essence and the reality. The individual ego, being the reflection or image of divinity or Brahman, is divine in its true nature. And this true self, capital S, is known in Sanskrit as the Atman. The knowledge of this oneness of the Atman, or subjective reality, with Brahman, the universal truth, is described in Jnana Yoga as the only means of attaining to complete liberation from the bondage of selfishness, and from attachment to body and senses, which are the causes of all worldliness, unhappiness, and misery. This, my friends, is our declaration of independence. This is the thing you put up in every office, you know, about the fire department and the rules, and everybody's got to be treated equally. Hey, this could well be posted, these pages, as the essence of what this holistic view, that this wonderful, unbounded place called India, the subcontinent of India, where it looks like we got the full manifestation of it early, is coming from. The light of the knowledge of the Atman. It means that literally. And of, I've got it. It's what with Brahman alone? It's unity. See, the word's missing out. Abhedananda. The light of the knowledge of the Atman, and of its, we'll say, unity with Brahman, alone will dispel the darkness of ignorance, which prevents us from reaching the abode of absolute existence. We're proofing as we go to the one-horse open snow. Okay. Which prevents us from reaching the abode of absolute existence, intelligence, and bliss. Now, these delineations are three pretty comprehensive ways of trying to share the ineffable, the infinity of existence, which cannot really be brought down to the relative plane in words. But this is what's translated from the Sanskrit existence, intelligence, bliss, Sat Chit Ananda, and which now deludes us. You see, this darkness of ignorance, which now deludes us into identifying the individual self, small s, with the body, senses, mind, and their modification. This ignorance is designated in Sanskrit as avidya, meaning no, and vidya meaning to insight, to see. It comes from the word to see. And I love the fact, you know, that in Latin, vidya becomes video. I see. And in modern American English, it's TV, video. I want to tune into the video. All right. This is pretty unifying, kids. It doesn't get much better than this. So this ignorance is designated in Sanskrit as avidya, or nescience, which means no science, science meaning knowledge, and is the source of all false knowledge, egotism, attachment to the lower self, self-centeredness, our whole problem, and other people's problem, and to the world. We've had some grand devotees and sannyasins here. We have really. And it's partly our job to try to help us remember, as the generations roll, young people come into the Vedanta Society, who these people are and were. And I know that the devotees that we hear about, whom we never saw before we came, they're becoming kind of like illustrious. They're becoming, legends. And I'd love you to know that the Americans were attracted through the power of Sri Ramakrishna to the Vedanta Society were giants in their time, and they were funny, and they were grounded, and they were different. And one of them was named Mohananda. And as much as anybody, this very building, he's responsible because he carried this place on his shoulders the way my brother's doing now for years. And he said, one time he said, I got no problem with my ego. It's everybody else's who's giving me problems. So, well, see, the beautiful thing is we can say that each one of us in turn. And it's all a big sham. The sooner we can get beyond it, the better for ourselves, and maybe more importantly for everybody else. Okay. Being deceived by the elusive power, we mistake the body for soul and soul for body, matter for spirit, and spirit for matter. It's the whole show. It's what they call Maya. In ignorance of our true self, capital S, we work solely to gratify selfish motives, that means self-centered motives, and to reap some result from our actions. But the fun part is we really can't do it. The lovely story about the Presbyterians. You know, we love every denomination. They all come in and do their dance and song. They say, smile and shine. Some Presbyterian was saying that the land on which some guy was living, that he was the proprietor of that land. He was the caretaker, the steward. The man said, no, I ain't the steward. I own the land. And the Presbyterian said to him, speak to me about that in 100 years. So here we knock ourselves out to assimilate. That's one of the ways of getting at it. Everything in the world. You know what the billionaire wants when he wakes up in the morning? He's got $1 billion. You know what he wants when he puts his feet on the ground? What he has to want? 1,000,000,001. Because he's seeking infinity. And he'll never get it by looking for it outside in the relative plane. But Jnana Yoga would waken us from this deep sleep. He didn't say deep, I did. But Jnana Yoga would waken us from this sleep of ignorance by showing us that the Atman, infinity within, where joy is experienced as oneness, is joy inside. The infinite inside is experienced as joy. Show us that the Atman is immortal, unchangeable, all-knowing, and free by its own nature from eternity to eternity. By its very nature, from eternity to eternity, that through the influence of nescience, or avidya, the lack of seeing, lack of knowledge, the individual ego thinks of itself as changeable and subject to birth and death, and forgetting that the fountainhead of freedom, knowledge, and everlasting happiness is abiding within. It seeks knowledge and happiness from outside and becomes the slave of desires and passions. It further reminds us that whatever we think or perform mentally or physically is like a dream in the sleep of self-delusion. It's like a dream in the sleep of self-delusion caused by the power of nescience or avidya, that these dreams of the sleep of ignorance can be removed neither by work, nor by devotion, nor by meditation, but by the light and power of vidya, video, seeing, the light. Abhedananda says Jnana is light, Bhakti is love. These others are preliminaries. The final resolution is seeing things, experiencing them as they are. And Brahmananda says, in effect, this is seen in a sphere of light. The very infinity shining in which we live and move and have our being. So these things can be seen by the light and power of vidya, the knowledge of the Atman or self, and of its relation to Brahman.
Do we still have sound? do we still have a sound mind and a body here?
I think so. No complaints.
All right.
Yes,
It's because there's nobody there, right? No, okay.
No, still
okay.
there? Oh, you
All
go.
right. This knowledge cannot be obtained as the result of any virtuous act or prayer, but comes to the soul when the intellect and heart have been purified by unselfish and righteous works, and when the individual ego begins to discriminate between the real and unchangeable Atman and the apparent and changeable matter or force. The Jnana Yoga teaches that right discrimination and proper analysis are indispensable to the acquisition of knowledge of the true self and reality which underlies phenomenal objects. It also declares that knowledge of the self will bring to the soul the realization of absolute truth more quickly than the practice of Raja Yoga or Karma or Bhakti Yoga.
Well, there's more here to tell the story than we have time or energy for. I just love every word of this. To me, it is, in fact, and we mentioned Declaration of Independence, to me it is a manifesto. One could not only put it on the wall of your office the way we're required to do by law, about being kind to everybody and treating everybody well and all that, the rights, the inalienable rights, life, liberty, and pursuit, and treating people as equal, that is to say, seeing the Spirit of God, and that's what this nation's founded on. So it's not just some kind of an idea. It's who we are. It's the very isness of the American reality. So these things are huge, and there are those of us who feel that each person has their own spot on the path of the mountain to God, and that's what counts. Not what adjective suits you and what political party and all that. That's not the real person. The real man is not an adjective, he's a noun. More than that, he's a verb, he's action, it's energy, subjective. So every one of the yogas has its pluses. And that's why we feel that a combination, many of us, that is to say, we think that it's only a question of percentages where the Vedantas have different perceptions, you see. Maybe in Vedanta here in Hollywood, we might think that 90% of the people are going to find it through a harmonious development of all of the aspects of their being, the strong right arm, the intensive ability which makes us human to discern through the intelligence, beyond the intelligence to find the very essence of wisdom, the heart, which by love alone can bring us right into the very presence of God, and poof. And then, of course, meditation, the royal path for all. So yeah. Jnana Yoga is considered the quickest. For how many? Sri Ramakrishna keeps encouraging us to be careful about trying to jump to the roof all in one jump. There are some who are so touched by the essence, which we can hear. Yes, believe it or not, Ramakrishna says Jnana first and then Bhakti. Hey, the first day we come, we can hear the grand words of Shankara, 800 AD or something, but probably the greatest philosopher ever lived. You know, like way beyond Zebra, even beyond Plato, standing on his shoulders or whatever you wish. Shankara says Atman and Brahman are one. Brahman alone exists. All else is illusory. And the path of love, after we get that, don't you see, you come here the first day, you hear that, okay, that's Vedanta. I like that. I believe. I like that. Well, then what are you going to do? That's up to you. That's up to you and your teacher. We can all use an inspiration. That's what we've had with our daddy and mommy. I think of Vedanta as a very personal religion because its mediation is through these wisdom souls, particularly in our grace, the grace of our lives from India, opened the doors and windows to the sunshine of love and light. So Ramakrishna says, first jnana. And then let's make sure that that light isn't hidden under a bushel basket. Let's make sure that it comes out in the waves of love. And other people can feel it. And other people can want it. And other people can know that we mean it. Because we only have to point to the recent people who've experienced this wonderful awareness of the infinite in all of its manifestations. It's Ramakrishna, his 16 disciples, of whom we believe that every one of these 16 disciples of his had what we call the highest union with God, which is Advaita. And it may surprise some people who don't understand that there are some of us who do not emphasize bhakti or jnana or something. Like, what union do you belong to? I'm a Democrat. Told you I was outside the Pantages the other night. And they're having this show, Alexander Hamilton. Huh? And I found some guy under the marquee of the thing all lit up. And I thought an older guy. I said, I'm a Jeffersonian. And he picked up, he smiled. Instead of Hamiltonian, see? And our friend Gary Valentine, now in glory, now flapping his way, well, every time I think of him, I think with love. He said, I'm a Jesusonian. So to be one-pointed in our yearning for God, the mountain of God, to climb to the top, and Shamakasa said, the experiences all say, whether you take this path or that path or all four paths is really not my problem. Your path, I don't even have to know about it. Men and husbands and wives don't know about it in their own family. But we would say it's something for you to discuss with a spiritually experienced soul. Your teacher, your manager. I think baseball is theological. I think it's perfection. So why monkey with perfection? They talk about the Sermon on the Mount, when they go up, they have the conversation there, the pitcher, the manager comes, the pitcher, the catcher, and pretty soon here comes the umpire, blessed in black. Oh, you guys have talked long enough. And I do speak. And I speak with some experience since World War II when I went home from school to listen to the Brooklyn Dodgers playing whoever it was on the radio. I speak of the manager, St. Thomas of Lasorda. And if you kids, if you can find a manager, if you can find a Swami from India, I'd say, few from America. We should all be inspirations to each other, every last one of us. If you can find a teacher, a manager, yes, as in baseball, to help you as you round the bases from first base to second, and help you find what is actually because of your temperament and every one of these people being infinitely precious, because they're the infinite shining, their paths should be infinitely precious to us. I'm sorry, I will not maintain, nor long resemble, or whatever it is, what Lincoln said at the Declaration in the Gettysburg Address, they will not long remember. Little note nor long remember what I say here, he said at Gettysburg. They'll remember what they did here. So I just believe that nobody needs to go around in Vedanta looking down his nose at anybody else's position in the mountain of God. That's God's joy. Where we are on the path, it's up to you, it's up to you, it's up to you. Yes, and your teacher, if you can find one. They say when you learn young enough, long enough, the teacher comes. So I'm going to carry us home. Whatever you want. I just love this. It's one of the best things I've ever read.
And of course, Vivekananda asked his disciples. He said he wanted people that could argue any philosophy as though it were the one and only way, but then be able to do that with every single one of them. Yeah. And so you get that flavor, and you're so when he's talking Jnana Yoga, then he's going to take that position that that's the path we're talking about right now.
Very quickly. Don't you see, we are all, this is the point that some won't get because they have this idea of different schools. We are all Advaitists. Or as we like to say, Advaitins. We are all Advaitins in Vedanta. And I love to say, Swami, because it hit me like bowling ball behind the knees, maybe in the last year or two, that this Swami Vivekananda, the lighthouse disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, who came to America and made a big splash. He really started the interfaith movement in America and the world by his taking the teachings of his teacher, master. That Vivekananda was the perfect jnani. And he was the perfect bhakta, path of love. He was the perfect Karmayoga, man of action. And he was the perfect Raja Yogi, man of meditation. He would meditate for hours, sitting like a stone, and inwardly enjoying all of the light and love of the Spirit infinite.
The path of wisdom, therefore, is best fitted for those earnest and sincere seekers after truth who have no leaning towards active life, who are not devotional in their nature, but who are preeminently intellectual, and who, having realized the transitory and ephemeral character of phenomenal objects, are no longer contented with sense pleasures. It is for those who wish to be free from all fetters and attachments, and who care nothing for earthly prosperity, success, social honor, fame, or fulfillment of personal ambitions, but whose sole desire is to know who they are in reality, what their true nature is, and what relation exists between their soul, God, and the universe. A traveler along this path should be philosophical in tendency, should have a sharp intellect and a keen power of analyzing the true nature of things. He should also have a firm conviction that the ultimate truth or reality of the universe is unchangeable. Using the sword of right discrimination between the self with a capital S and the non-self, he should sever all ties and should never allow himself to be overpowered by any external or internal influence. His mind should be undisturbed by passions or desires, his senses be well controlled, and his body be strong, healthy, and capable of bearing all hardships, as well as of overcoming all environmental conditions. He should have dispassion and be ever ready to renounce anything that does not help in his realization of truth. He must have absolute confidence in the teachings of the Jnana Yogins, or those who have become seers of truth by following the path of wisdom. And he must likewise have faith in the final truths expounded by the monistic system of Vedanta.
Okay, let's just take a deep breath for a minute, Swami. How are we doing?
10 minutes.
Okay. We've had a big meal, big 5-course dinner. We really have, because it's all here in this magnificent statement of one of the men that gave his life, perhaps came to earth this time to be part of the manifestation of this new wave of energy coming out of India from the superluminary. Hey man, I mean, we feel that sometimes there are people who are so drenched, they say God's saturated, that you really just see God shining in them. I use it every so often because I love to think of it. I've seen them, some of Edison's experiments or something. One's a big bulb, big old-fashioned with clear glass, maybe a point on the end where the glass maker, maybe we'll call it a 1,000-watt bulb. So I call these manifestations who come to earth every so often. I mean, I'm just trying to be factual about it, experiential. Is it not so? I call them superluminaries. So Buddha was one. And incidentally, Swami, I take a look at the Bodhi tree, which was planted not that many years ago. It's one of these things like the banyan tree, also a fig, that just develops multiple trunks. The banyan tree will go like this and then send down roots, into the ground and like that from the branches, and it'll cover a city block. I mean, but this one is becoming so mighty with its marvel. And I just found these little things in the leaves of bigger plants down below. And I said, what are these in the calla lily leaves? And they looked like little blueberries. And I found that they were squishy. They weren't walnuts. And I realized they're figs. They're from the Ficus religiosa, the tree that Buddha sat under. That tree is growing, not what, 300 feet from here? Mighty tree. So my prayer, my affirmation would be, may we all sit under the Bodhi tree of our life and experience and try to follow in the inspirational footsteps of these super illuminations like the Lord Buddha. Now, Swami, tell me what page we're on here.
54.
Yeah, 54. Let me just have some fun, and then if we have even 5 minutes left at the end, we'll see. But you see, we've heard it now. That was all the great oration of this marvelous man tonight. So the mind, and this is who we all might think of ourselves as being. One day we all found this place. We wish others to find in their own path, their own way. The mind of a beginner in Jnana Yoga must possess the power, a beginner, right? Of perfect concentration and meditation. And his soul must be filled with the longing for absolute freedom from all relative conditions and from the laws which govern phenomena. He must realize that even the phenomena are just sense experience, just the movie things, the movie screen, the stuff we see in front of it. He must realize that even the enjoyment of heavenly pleasures is a kind of bondage because it keeps the soul entangled in the meshes of phenomenal relativity. They believe heaven is something you've earned in a way, and you stay there on vacation or like a sabbatical or like a Caribbean cruise, and you don't earn any more money when you're taking your cruise. And after a while, you come back again to continue your path toward the end of the line, complete infinity, oneness with the shining infinity, awareness that that's what we are. Being well armed with all these noble qualities as his weapons, a Jnana yogi should fight against phenomenal appearances and with the ideal of the unity. Here's the point. We can all have this in our hearts right from the beginning, of the true self and the absolute Brahman ever before his mind's eye. He should march onward towards its realization, breaking down all names and forms with the hammer of right analysis and cleaving all ties of attachment with the sword of proper discrimination. Swami, take it from there.
Should he not stop till the goal is reached? He who goes through the path of wisdom burns the vast forest of the trees of phenomenal names and forms by starting in it the fire of right knowledge. All these names and forms are produced by Maya, the inscrutable power of Brahman, and according to Jnana Yoga, this power of Maya is inseparable from Brahman, as the power of heating is inseparable from fire. A Jnana yogi, in his search after Brahman, should reject all names and forms by saying, neti, neti, not this, until he realizes the one nameless, formless, and absolute being of the universe, where the subject and the object, the knower, knowledge, and its objects, losing their relativity, merge into the infinite ocean of blissful existence and supreme intelligence.
You see, Swami, he's still in a state of euphoria. This man, Abhedananda, is still in a state of euphoria. Now, this is a very small footnote to history, but I want you all to know that I have a friend who I hope may join us on this evening at some point in his life, who was one of 3 boys that left college together, back to back, as I like to say, with straw hats on their heads and a fishing pole like Huckleberry Finn. And they all went out, we discovered later, with what you could say is the same question: what is reality? And the third one was named Bob, became a philosopher. And we met, I think it was in October, maybe we met a few years ago, coming back again after our life's journey and saying, what have you found? What have you found? Basically, sharing like that. And Bob, the philosopher, who was a tremendous big brother to me in terms of admonition, advice, and guidance, he didn't know it, but he was providing the links for me to find Vedanta. He was. It's true. And he was saying neti-neti. That was his philosophical path. Very kindly, very gently, not angrily or, everything. But not this, not this, not this way, not that way. And I actually mentioned it when we were videoing this conversation between these 3 fellows. Neti-neti. And my brother Sid, who is himself now very high along the path of his mystical journey through life, said, speaking of a book that Bob wrote, he said it was a jewel of a book.
I think it's time for us to close. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same.
Swami, can we sing it for them? Let's try. Let's try. Come on now. Let's
Which one?
on. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet still he is the same.